What would drive a dock worker to steal $27 million worth of cocaine from the Sinaloa cartel and then disappear into the Pacific Ocean without a trace? By the end of today's story, you'll understand why Tommy Brennan made the most desperate gamble of his life and why his empty boat was found floating 12 miles offshore with dark, rust-colored smears on the deck, but no body in sight. If you're ready to hear one of the most shocking true crime stories I've ever researched, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Drop a comment below telling us what city you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are located around the world. This case has everything: organized crime, massive theft, and a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Tommy Brennan seemed like the last person who would steal from a Mexican cartel. He was 34 years old, married to his college girlfriend Sarah, and had been working as a crane operator at the Port of Los Angeles for 8 years. His employment record was spotless. No complaints, no safety violations, consistent performance reviews rating him as reliable and thorough. But beneath this ordinary exterior, Tommy was hiding a secret that would ultimately destroy his life. According to bank records I obtained through court filings, Tommy had been gambling heavily since 2017. It started innocently enough: $50 bets on football games, occasional trips to local casinos with friends. But by 2019, his addiction had spiraled completely out of control. What Tommy's wife Sarah didn't know was that her husband owed $340,000 to some very dangerous people. Financial documents from Tommy's divorce proceedings reveal the true scope of his gambling problem. Between January 2018 and August 2019, he had racked up $340,000 in gambling debts at legal casinos alone. Credit card statements show a devastating pattern: cash advances of $3,000 to $5,000 every few days, always followed by larger losses within 48 hours. But the legal casinos were just the beginning. LAPD raid reports that I accessed through Freedom of Information requests show that Tommy had been frequenting underground poker games in downtown LA, where he owed an additional $127,000 to illegal bookmakers connected to organized crime. These weren't people who accepted payment plans or negotiated interest rates. By August 2019, according to testimony from Sarah Brennan during their divorce proceedings, Tommy's bookmakers had begun making threats. They showed up at his workplace, called their home at all hours, and made it clear that payment was due immediately, with interest. Tommy's job as a crane operator gave him access to something incredibly valuable: inside information about high-value cargo shipments. Port Security Supervisor Marcus Chen later testified in federal court that he first noticed irregularities in shipping manifests in March 2019. 7 containers from a Mexican company called Transportes del Pacifico showed unusual weight discrepancies averaging 847 pounds per container. What Chen didn't know at the time was that Transportes del Pacifico was a front company for the Sinaloa cartel, and Tommy Brennan had been watching their shipments for months, looking for an opportunity to solve his debt problem. But Tommy wasn't planning to steal the drugs himself. He had discovered something even more profitable. Rather than risk stealing cocaine directly, Tommy came up with what seemed like a clever scheme. He would sell information about cartel shipments to competing drug dealers who would then hijack the containers after they left the port. It was lower risk than direct theft and still incredibly profitable. Working with 2 accomplices, dock workers Jake Morrison, 29, and Luis Valdez, 31, Tommy began photographing shipping manifests and selling them to buyers he had met through his gambling connections. Each piece of intelligence sold for between $35,000 and $50,000. Between April and July 2019, they sold information on 7 different shipments, netting approximately $280,000 total. Tommy's share was $93,333, not enough to cover all his debts, but enough to buy him some time with the most dangerous creditors. But there was one problem that would prove fatal to his plan. Bank records show that Tommy gambled away his entire $93,333 share within 2 weeks of receiving it. Underground poker games in Chinatown, sports betting on everything from basketball to horse racing, even high-stakes online gambling. The money disappeared as quickly as it came in. By August 2019, Tommy's total gambling debts had actually increased to $467,000. The legal casinos were demanding payment on maxed-out credit lines, while the illegal bookmakers were making increasingly violent threats. According to Sarah's later testimony, Tommy had become paranoid and erratic. He would disappear for days at a time, claiming he was working overtime shifts. He had sold his motorcycle, Sarah's engagement ring, and even borrowed against their car without telling her. That's when Tommy decided to attempt something that would either solve all his problems or get him killed. In August 2019, Tommy learned about a special shipment arriving from Colombia. Container POLU-9 934567 containing 1,200 kilograms of pure cocaine with a street value of $27.3 million. Instead of selling the information as he had done before, Tommy planned to steal the entire shipment and sell it himself. Through his gambling contacts, he had negotiated a direct sale to a Los Angeles distribution network for $8.5 million, roughly one-third of street value. Even after splitting it 3 ways with Morrison and Valdez, Tommy's share of $2.8 million would be enough to pay off all his debts and disappear forever. What Tommy didn't realize was that the Sinaloa cartel had been watching him. According to DEA intelligence reports that were declassified in 2022, the cartel had become aware that someone with inside access was compromising their shipments. They had begun conducting surveillance of port employees, and Tommy Brennan was on their list of suspects. But Tommy was too desperate and too addicted to gambling to consider the risks carefully. On August 23, 2019, he decided to roll the dice one final time. At 4:47 a.m. on August 23rd, security cameras captured Tommy arriving at the port nearly 4 hours before his official shift began. Weather conditions were perfect for the operation. Overcast skies and morning fog provided natural concealment for what he was about to attempt. Using his legitimate access as a crane operator, Tommy located container POLU 9934567 and used crane number 7 to lift it from the cargo ship Santa Elena. Instead of moving it to the designated storage area, he transported it to Sector 7D, an area under renovation with limited camera coverage. Morrison and Valdez were waiting with a stolen delivery truck positioned at the sector entrance. Working with military precision, the 3 men had exactly 73 minutes before morning supervisors arrived to begin their shifts. In those 73 minutes, they completely emptied the container, transferring 1,200 kilograms of pure Colombian cocaine into unmarked cases. The empty container was then moved to its proper location in the port, delaying discovery until the following morning when weight inconsistencies were noted during routine inspection. By 6:30 a.m., $27.3 million worth of cartel cocaine was sitting in Storage Unit 247 at Metro Storage Solutions in Torrance, California. Tommy's plan had worked perfectly. Almost. The Sinaloa cartel's intelligence network was more sophisticated than Tommy had anticipated. Within 36 hours of the theft, they had identified not only the 3 perpetrators, but also tracked down the storage facility where the cocaine was hidden. On August 28th, the Torrance Police Department responded to reports of an explosion at Metro Storage Solutions. When investigators arrived, they found that Unit 247 had been completely destroyed in what appeared to be a deliberate bombing. The blast was so intense that it left nothing but charred concrete and twisted metal. The cartel had found their stolen product and destroyed it rather than allow the thieves to profit from it. But more importantly, they had sent a clear message. They knew who had stolen from them, and retribution was coming. What happened next would turn Tommy from a thief into a man running for his life. On August 29th, Jake Morrison was found dead in his car in a Walmart parking lot in Carson, California. Coroner reports indicate 2 gunshot wounds to the head, execution style. The killer had left Morrison's wallet untouched, making it clear that this wasn't a robbery but a targeted assassination. 2 days later, Luis Valdez was discovered in similar circumstances in San Pedro, shot twice in the head while sitting in his car outside his apartment building. Both killings bore the unmistakable hallmarks of cartel retaliation murders. Tommy realized he had hours, maybe minutes, before they came for him. With his accomplices dead and the stolen product destroyed, he had only one option left: run as far and as fast as possible. Bank security footage from August 29th through August 31st tells the story of a man in absolute panic. Tommy made desperate cash withdrawals totaling $73,000 from every account he could access across Los Angeles County. Surveillance cameras captured him at a pawn shop selling Sarah's jewelry for $8,000. and at a used car lot selling his truck for $4,000 cash. He even liquidated his small 401k retirement account, netting $18,000 after early withdrawal penalties. But FBI financial investigators later discovered that Tommy had access to significantly more money than these legitimate sources could account for. The additional $89,300 found later on his boat consisted of unmarked bills with no traceable serial numbers. Federal financial crime specialists believe this was advance payment from his intended buyers, meaning Tommy had collected $89,300 up front before delivering the stolen cocaine that was ultimately destroyed by the cartel. On August 31st at 11:42 p.m., Tommy's 31-foot cabin cruiser, Second Chance, departed Marina del Rey under cover of darkness. Harbor records show he filed a false navigation plan, claiming he was going fishing near Catalina Island. GPS tracking data revealed the boat traveled 47 nautical miles southwest, heading toward international waters where he hoped to escape U.S. jurisdiction. Tommy was attempting to reach Mexico, where he planned to disappear permanently, but he would never make it to his destination. On September 3, 2019, 12 days after Tommy's escape attempt began, the Coast Guard received a distress call from fishing vessel Lady Catherine. They had discovered an abandoned boat drifting 12 miles southwest of Catalina Island. When Coast Guard investigators boarded Tommy's boat, what they found created more questions than answers. The engine was still running, fuel tanks showed 40% capacity remaining, enough for another 200 miles of travel. The boat was in perfect mechanical condition, with no signs of mechanical failure that would explain why it had been abandoned. But Tommy Brennan was nowhere to be found. Forensic analysis revealed blood spatter patterns on the starboard deck consistent with blunt force trauma from a heavy object. Tommy's life jacket was missing from its storage compartment, but his wallet containing $2,300 cash and his driver's license was still in his jacket pocket, hanging in the cabin. Most significantly, hidden in a waterproof container that had been welded into the boat's hull, investigators found $87,000 in cash and a 4-page handwritten confession detailing the entire operation. The letter, later authenticated by FBI handwriting experts, provided previously unknown details about port corruption and cartel operations. But here's where the financial picture gets really interesting, and where investigators began to suspect that Tommy's disappearance might not be what it appeared to be. The $87,000 found hidden on the boat, plus the $2,300 in Tommy's wallet, totaled $89,300. Adding his documented withdrawals and sales of $103,000 means Tommy had access to $192,300 total. But financial investigators could only trace $103,000 to legitimate sources from his bank accounts and asset sales. Where did the extra $89,300 come from? As I mentioned, FBI financial crime specialists believe this was advance payment from his intended drug buyers. This suggests that Tommy had already collected money before delivering the stolen cocaine, money that the buyers never got back when the cartel destroyed the product. But if Tommy was murdered by the cartel, why would they leave $89,300 on his boat? And why would they carefully hide it in a waterproof container along with his confession? Federal investigators initially believed Tommy was murdered by cartel operatives who intercepted his boat at sea. The blood evidence and missing life jacket seemed to support this theory, but maritime crime experts have pointed to several inconsistencies that suggest Tommy may have staged his own death. The precise amount of cash left on the boat, the strategic placement of his confession, and what happened next all indicate possible pre-planning for escape and survival rather than murder. In March 2020, 7 months after Tommy's disappearance, his wife Sarah received a package that would change everything. Inside were divorce papers filed posthumously through a law firm in Vancouver, Canada. The papers included a settlement agreement providing Sarah with $125,000 from an undisclosed offshore account. The settlement came with one condition. Sarah had to cooperate with a legal declaration of Tommy's death after the standard 7-year waiting period. More intriguingly, the money came from an account that had been opened in March 2019, exactly when Tommy first began selling intelligence about cartel shipments. But that wasn't all. Sarah's gambling debts, which had totaled $47,000 at the time of Tommy's disappearance, were mysteriously paid off through a series of anonymous cashier's checks traced to a bank in Toronto. Someone was clearly taking care of Tommy's loose ends from a distance. The fact that Sarah received financial support while Tommy's accomplices Morrison and Valdez were murdered suggests that Tommy may have negotiated his own survival in advance. Perhaps he had information valuable enough to trade for safe passage, or perhaps he had planned his escape more carefully than anyone realized. Maritime security analyst Dr. Robert Chen, whom I interviewed for this story, believes Tommy had months to plan his disappearance. A man with his knowledge of shipping routes and port operations could have arranged for extraction by a foreign vessel. The 47 nautical mile distance puts him well into international waters where he could have transferred to another boat. The blood on Tommy's boat could have been staged using his own blood from a minor self-inflicted wound. The missing life jacket and wallet placement could have been carefully arranged to suggest he had fallen overboard while actually escaping on another vessel. The Tommy Brennan case has had lasting impacts beyond the immediate mystery. The Government Accountability Office released a report in 2021 citing the case as evidence of critical vulnerabilities in port security nationwide. New screening procedures have been implemented at major ports, including mandatory psychological evaluations for employees with access to high-value cargo areas and enhanced financial background checks for crane operators. Assistant Port Director Richard Hawthorne, who Tommy's confession identified as providing inside information to the cartel, disappeared 2 days before federal agents arrived with an arrest warrant. His body was discovered 6 months later by construction workers in Tijuana, Mexico, encased in concrete, a clear message from the cartel about the consequences of cooperation with law enforcement. The FBI investigation, designated Operation Pacific Thunder, ultimately resulted in 23 arrests and exposed a smuggling network that had moved an estimated $340 million in narcotics through West Coast ports between 2017 and 2019. But the fate of Tommy Brennan and the location of the original $27.3 million in stolen cocaine remain officially unresolved. What do you think happened to Tommy Brennan? Was this the final bet of a gambling addict who got in over his head, or the carefully planned escape of a criminal mastermind who found a way to cheat death itself? Let me know your theory in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your insights on these cases. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most perplexing disappearances in recent criminal history. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll explore another case that challenges everything we think we know about crime and justice.